Hi de Rompereglas. I'm about to call in Lee. Whoops. How do I do this? Okay. Ozo. All right, here we go. All right.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was trying to press the button to have you join, and I was like, press,
Mm-mm.
press. Wasn't doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Ah. Mm. Whew. Yeah. So I think Saturday's a full moon or tomorrow's a full moon.
Oh, I haven't been tracking. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always like I'm just feeling like there is a like a lot of for me even this week, just it's been sort of like a another layer,
Yeah.
right? Just another layer of illusion,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in particular the illusion of around like unworthiness or all of the like the shit that's just not real about us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So been doing a lot of work around that just on my own.
Yeah. I've actually been grateful just to be able to be alone because
Yeah,
there's so much to track that's happening. It's like these little I have to be attentive enough to pull the pieces apart when they're coming up because it's like, oh, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. And
yeah,
it's a lot of anger.
yeah,
It's just anger, 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 anger. And it's body working. I literally, like when we jumped on this call, it just something activated in my pelvic floor that was like, oh, that hasn't been feeling stuff as much. It's mostly been, I think we were talking literally about like this energy center here. It's like everything's been pain here, like
yeah.
just clearing that
Around the
area.
body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you move anger effectively? Like what works for you?
Um, so there's a few things that it's a little difficult to like exactly understand what I'm doing on a logical level, but I've been taking plants that are specifically for heart opening and solar plexus opening and for heart health. So like hibiscus has been kind of a baseline, and then there's a grief medicine that um, touches that area as well, and like also works with the nervous system that I've been using. And um, passively just taking it is not enough.
Okay.
So the one of the practices that I'm reactivating is like it's a breathwork practice. I think it's um, even though I haven't trained in like Tumo lineage directly with anybody, I haven't gone systematically through that. I think I've been using Tumo. Well, I learned Tumo practices from the mentor that I'm working with now, so I've been using those to move and just kind of open up those channels. And it's almost like opening up the tissues to actually receive the plants coming in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've just been, whatever is arising, I've just been journaling a lot and moving the energy like when I work out, like
Mhm.
using music and getting on my spinning bike and
Right.
just kind of moving that way and just like focusing on the motion or focusing on the sensation and like using my mind to move it through my body.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then actually moving my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some
Yeah, and go ahead.
oh no, I was thinking like I have a lot of resistance to movement. It's just something it
Mm,
kind of like lives with me because I've actually dealt with paralysis and
right.
like my chronic illness journey, it was sort of it became really unsafe to exercise for a while
Oh,
because it would actually exacerbate the condition. And
yeah,
so I have like it's almost like a psychological barrier. It's like that's the scariest thing for me to do is to go into any sort of intensive movement.
mm,
And it's been interesting to sort of find my way into okay, what feels safe and what also is like pushing that edge too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really interesting. I've been thinking a lot about how, everybody's energy signature is so different, and everybody
Right.
has a different relationship to all of these like internal pieces of ourselves.
Right.
And that somatic work is not really about like, oh yeah, do this thing, and it will get you this outcome, but really about what works for your energy system, what works for your unique signature.
Right.
And movement for me has always been like the lifesaver. And when I get stuck, I literally like stop moving and I have to like bring myself into movement to get unstuck.
Right. Right.
Right? So it's like I can, as a coach or mentor, I can say, oh, we do this and do that. And you have to check in with yourself and be like, actually, that doesn't resonate, but maybe this does.
Hmm.
Right? Really like access your own wisdom and what your body needs in that moment.
Yeah. And even
Mhm.
pushing back against the perceived authority, like pushing back against the teacher is like part of the I feel like that's so much a part of the training too.
Yes.
Like your self advocacy is actually kind of a mastery step. It's like a self mastery step.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Hi, Lorena. I feel like um, honoring your own energetic authority over the authority of the authority figure.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have stories too. I don't even think I should get into them. But like the breathworking community is like it's wonderful, but it's also can be so problematic for that reason. It's like
Okay.
um I don't even know how to like exactly get into that. I could just feel my brain go into this blip space, but like even with the breath because it's like we're talking about that area where the diaphragm is. It's a very sensitive area to start working
Yeah.
with and start opening up. Like it's you're literally starting to resequence and reunite like upper and lower.
Yeah.
And the breath will do that. And if you're not prepared for, like, if somebody's bringing you through a very cathartic style, you may not actually be prepared, or like you have to plan for the holding afterwards, like the aftercare
Yeah.
component of it.
Yes.
And I have been so like brutally dropped after being like blasted wide open just because whoever was working with me was not sequencing aftercare into it and wasn't actually maybe trained in like nervous system attunement, or that wasn't actually being prioritized, or
Yeah.
even to the exclusion of like certain types of trauma survivors. It's like, oh, if you have PTSD or if you're suffering from anything that might be a little bit out of developmental trauma spectrum,
Yeah.
there sometimes healing environments can get really exclusive for that reason because not everyone has the capacity to hold
Absolutely.
what your particular experience is because you're not the dominant experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And even last night on the call, someone, there was a process that happened, and the person was like, well, I don't want to really do that. That may be too big for me, but what about this? And
Right.
they brought their own practice, and that was perfect.
Yeah.
But it was something that I'd never done. And so like that's how, people can bring their wisdom into the space
Right.
and say, hey, these are the practices. We sort of like pool all of our wisdom and our practices together. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we can all cross pollinate and see
Right.
what works for us.
Yeah, I love that, the cross pollination aspect of it. Yeah. Yeah. And also,
Ah,
sort of like speaking of which, I mean, yesterday, like you gave me a really nice send off in community because I was like, I'm stepping back. And that was like a whole other thing, was just like, it took a lot for me to even go into that space of like, wait, like Isha's telling me that I can get celebrated. Like it's going to be like a half an hour. And like, it was terrifying. It was actually like going into it, I could feel myself spinning out. I'm like kind of going up into my head and trying to explain like what's going on with me. And um, I think when you texted me, like, I hope you're able to receive all of that. And I'm just like, I'm trying. Like it was actually, it was a big payload, like a
it was.
big payload. And I don't know. I think maybe I'm like deviating a little bit from what we were talking about, but there is something about the just so interesting about what's been building in your community around the non-hierarchical relational aspect of this work. It's like dismantling. I mean, we were talking about it in terms of supremacist structures and rigidity, but just like dismantling that kind of hierarchical, like looking for wisdom outside of yourself
Yeah.
in order to actually fully retrieve and step into, like, as you use the phrase energetic authority, which is just a really like, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's like you're literally stepping into your energetic authority, which has to do with like visibility, occupying space. Like
Mhm.
those are phrases that I've really um, absorbed because of you and being proximate to your work, I think.
Yeah. And a friend of mine calls it occupying your full size.
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
Right? Taking up your whole
Oh
field,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. And
It was,
and some of us have like really good invisibility cloaks. Like as a kid, I knew how to be invisible. I got out of so much shit as a kid because I could like shrink my energy body and people wouldn't even see me.
yeah.
Like we would literally have to systematically. I think I got out of CPR training. I got out of some kind of ROTC aviation training because of it. Because I was like, I don't want to sit in there, and I like shrunk my energy field, and I didn't have to do any of that shit that they wanted us to do in high school because I could make myself disappear.
Yeah.
But the converse of that is like it was super scary to take up space. Like I didn't actually develop that capacity.
Yeah. I mean, same for me. Like being visible, it was like the nail that was going to get hammered down.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you did
Mm.
not want to be visible because being visible would get you punished.
Right.
And so I, my energies, I'm always kind of like dipping down, like, yeah, I'm doing this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lorena, you can relate,
I
right?
do.
Yeah,
Oh, and yeah,
you know,
Lorena. Yeah, totally.
yeah. So even now in my life, like even showing up online, writing, posting is still like there's still subtle ways that I'm hiding. And like every day I work just to step in just a little bit deeper into more expression. Like it is such a freaking practice to break those habits and patterns and cycles.
Yeah.
It really is it's challenging, especially for the ones that kept you the safest, the ones that were like the invisibility cloak is like my favorite.
Me too.
Yeah, hiding is my freaking thing.
I know. I'm like, I was dreaming of like this cave. Like, I'm like, I'm picturing this cave I need to go into. Like, I want to go into a sound isolation chamber, like, total cutoff from the real world. I'm actually like, I feel like I'm working really hard on building my invisibility chamber. And I'm like, wait, you need to be focusing on this other stuff.
Yeah, and that actually, I mean, that actually is kind of a good segue to what we were talking about earlier about being a citizen of the world, you
Yeah.
know, and what I mean by that is being an active participant in what's happening in the world and knowing what's happening globally, feeling connected to what's happening globally,
Yeah.
and and also pulling back enough so that you can restore, you can come back to yourself and center your joy and like fill up,
Yeah.
because the world is an overwhelming place. There's a lot of shit going on. It's
Yeah.
not stopping.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I've been sitting a lot. I mean, we were just talking about, I was like sharing that I was sitting in a circle with people who are in New York who were really like impacted recently. Um, and I think I just cried all night. It was just some like some bomb hit me afterwards, and I just couldn't contain it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even rational. It wasn't like there was something going on in my head and this thought process was connected to what was happening in my body. It was like just a really visceral impact of sitting with other bodies, even in a Zoom space, can be really
Yeah,
powerful. And
yeah,
I mean, I think that that grief work was lasting well into the morning. Like I slept in today. I didn't feel great about it. I felt like I had something lying on my chest. Like I couldn't, I'm like, I was just like desperate to feel differently than I actually did. A
mm-hmm.
shower didn't move it. But it was just sort of like really, it did feel like kind of tending. Like I had to just
Yeah,
keep tending to the pain. It was physical, actual physical pain in my chest. And you know, sometimes I get very reactive, and it's not always a reactive state, but I get this reactive state of like, am I going to let the world hijack my nervous system for the rest of my life? Because it's
yeah,
like, at a certain point, it's like, as somebody who's a survivor, it's like, I have lived in that. I have lived taking care of other people's hurt and pain and taking it all
yeah,
on and like eating sorrow just
yeah,
constantly. And the habit that I need to learn is to stop, just to stop doing that. It's almost,
yeah,
which almost feels like, oh, am I a psychopath? Like, am I a sociopath? Am I like not a human being now? And, but it is, it's like, it's, I was like hearing something recently about the way that trauma can kind of leave you like on. You're either like hyper vigilant on, or you're like really depressed low off. And I've been noticing like, oh yeah, my switch is either flicked way up in one direction or way down in the other.
uh,
And I'm like, okay, so my challenge is the middle. My challenge
uh,
is weaving the middle. It's not to be too buried in one direction and not so dissociated and high in my practices. Like, okay, can you tolerate the ebb and flow of being like in pain and then feeling better and then being in pain again and knowing that it's just going to keep like cycling back and forth probably as long as you're in a human body, and just to start to develop some sort of literacy and some sense of care, or like even like pride in myself for like, okay, you can do this. Like it's like the
yeah.
good pain, it's like the good burn, like make it a
Yes,
good burn.
Lee, this piece you're bringing up around like breaking the habit of having been that person who's held other people's pain, like that is so, there's a part of me that does really resist knowing the details of what's happening globally. Like, yeah, like I saw that some friends of mine marked themselves safe, and I was like, okay, a shooting happened. And I remember just being like, not right now.
Right.
Because I wasn't in a state to receive it. And I had to like check in with my nervous system and be like, can you take this in? Not right now. And today I feel more ready because I feel more in my effervescence and in my joy. And I feel like I have more capacity to be like, okay, I can, my nervous system can sort of feel the impact of this today. And I think that's so important to like, I'm a fucking asshole about tracking your nervous system because we need to be able we need to be able to discern like what we have a container for and what we don't,
Right.
or and when, like even with my partner, you know, the other day, a couple weeks ago, they were starting a relationship conversation with me, and I was like, wait, are we having a relationship conversation? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let me get myself ready, because I just need to like prepare my body to receive it because I have a very sensitive attachment system. It's like ding, ding,
Mm-hmm.
ding, ding, ding. And I was like, I just want to make sure that this is what we're doing. I can ground my body and receive all that.
I love that you do that. And every time I hear you say, wait, like when you go through those pieces of
Yes.
consent, I'm like, oh man, I gotta up my game. Like, but in the thing, I mean, I also love in my current partnership is like, yeah, the consent component is there in a way that hasn't been in previous relationships. And it's like something that I'm learning to get good at. And like, I kind of like love, that's almost like the magic. It's like that's the ritual magic that happens before. It's like, let me prepare. And then like you spin around 3 times and click your heels or something. Like, I'm like, yeah, just let me click my heels first. Like, let me put my shoes on. Like, let me get
It's
this,
that quick sometimes.
let me make sure they're the glitter shoes. And like, I don't know. Um, yeah, I absolutely like, I love that. Like, we need to make magic mundane, like mundane magic.
Yes.
Magic is can be very mundane, and also it's like mundane magic is also one of the ways that I'm actually able to navigate reality.
Oh my God, that's like the name of a course, mundane
Mundane
magic.
magic, yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
But yeah, to make ritual out of daily life.
right,
Just right, ritual. Everything is a freaking ritual.
right. Even like
That's
getting the earrings in, getting your earrings in the morning, for example. Like
yes,
I was
exactly.
just thinking about that because I bought these earring backs for some hoop earrings. They're
Yeah.
just like really beautiful silver hoop earrings, and like I'm like, I have these. I don't wear them because they don't have earring backs because the earring backs weren't good. So I spent a lot of time looking for like earring backs that really latch, and I found
Yeah.
the perfect ones, and I'm like, I think I need to wear them. Yeah,
Leonina, thank you. Yes, blessings back to you. Mundane magic for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and I had sometimes my oldest daughter, like she likes to pick my jewelry out for me. She sometimes puts my clothing together. I'm just kind of like, no, no, don't do it. Just pick my earrings. And she'll pick earrings that go with like, and it really is this beautiful ritual between her and I, where I allow her to dress me and I give her the authority, like her fashion authority, and it's just like it's this bonding moment. It's this very intimate moment where she's
right,
like, "That's me," and I don't have a say, and I go with it, and
yeah.
you know,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. I love the mundane magic, and through the work with Phoenix Farms and Speed of the Land, I something like really clicked in there. You know, day one, first day we met, and I
Right.
was like, "Oh yeah, like it's everywhere. The ritual is everywhere."
Everywhere. Absolutely. Yeah.
And we can see putting on our earrings as the dullest thing in the world, like I'm just getting dressed in the morning, but if you allow yourself to sink into it, and it's really about savoring the moment and the experience of like, yes, like I'm decorating my body.
Right.
And I'm whether some mornings I wake up feeling like, oh, I'm a dude and I have nothing to wear because all of my clothes are really
Yeah.
girly, but really like choosing your clothes, choosing the way you dress, like, yeah, having that be a ritual, having like, how do I want to express myself today?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. For me, it's like trying to figure out hair because I have really coarse, multi-textured hair that frizzes like nobody's business. And my whole life has been a whole trauma of Pert Plus. And then as I was trying, like I got older, I'm like, okay, now you can start buying your own like stuff to put in your hair.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of getting better at it, but it's like it's such a balance between like the texture. So I don't even know why I'm talking about this. But it's like which products are going to leave residue and get kind of heavy and sticky, which ones are actually like, sometimes the detergent based ones really strip and it's great. Like I'm talking about shampoo, but it's like there's a level of it that I've been actually thinking more is specifically because of Speed of the Land with Trala, like the whole piece around adornment and like what is adornment. And I have been thinking a lot about anointing. Like I recently I kind of made a mugwort smoke bath with like some it was sort of like I was just like letting go of some shit and I'm just like, I'm gonna just make this smoke bath. I'm gonna stink to high heaven and it's gonna be great. And then, none of that smoke actually washed out. I tried to wash it out, but the smell was still stuck in my hair. It's still stuck in my fingers. But I saved the ashes and I was kind of thinking about, okay, like what would these ashes be good for? Because I feel like they're not really medicine, but there's something about like this burning process that also is just like, I keep getting this message to like use the charcoal on my skin somehow to just sort of help with some like channel opening and just movement out, like the way you'd use
Yeah.
activated charcoal to draw something out of your system.
Yeah.
And we don't get to engage with reality like this because it's kind of taboo to burn stuff. It's like people don't like fire smoke. I remember when I was burning incense in a house in Philly, like the neighbor would get really upset and say like, you can't be smoking next doors. And it's like, I'm not, it's incense. But he was like really upset because he had, respiratory condition. And like, there's just something about like proximity to others and inviting ritual in that it's like, it almost has to be seamless in a way. Like you have to
Yes.
create things that can be seamless and not actually cause disruption to yourself because you're creating some kind of gradient in the space, if that makes sense. Almost think of it as
Hmm.
like water rolling downhill or something.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if you're saying this as well, but what I'm hearing you say is that, you live in proximity to so many people and that there's almost like you need to like carve out a space
Yeah,
for that magic to happen. Like there has to be sort of like this, I think, like a bubble that you
right,
create within which the ritual can happen or can be practiced.
right.
And I think that's a little bit of what Trello was talking about too, about like clearing the space,
Mhm.
clearing the space, clearing the space, like constantly clearing the space.
And
Like, 'cause
invoking it too.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and what you were saying about consent too, it's like, okay, let's set the space first before we
yes,
go into the space. Like before we
yes.
have the conversation, let me just prepare, like just do something to kind of reorient. Like even getting on a call with you, I was like, okay, I gotta like close out what I was just doing because I was going down this rabbit hole and like reorient and shift and like how do I honor the space that I am in with you and close out what I was doing beforehand. And I think we're not trained up in that, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. No,
yeah,
now that you mention it, yeah, like when you asked, can we get on a Zoom call beforehand? And I was like, yeah. And I could feel myself preparing my body and sort of like dropping into my heart, like, oh, it's you're meeting with Lee, and this is where you feel Lee, and then like seeing you and then jumping on here. There was a softening that needed to happen because I had been work mode all morning and I was like doing things.
yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
And I was in grief mode, so I was really low before hopping on the call with you. So I was like, okay, how can you get up a little? Like put down your phone, take a breath, feel your voice vibrating in your throat, like because you're
Yeah,
talking to
yeah.
somebody. And even just like just naming some of the stuff that was going through my head too, like just pain points and like memories and flashbacks and just something to kind of like get communicate with you. So now my focus is more outwards and I'm actually like externalize my gaze with you.
Yes.
I think I saw somebody post something recently that really hit me kind of hard about like a morning practice where it's like when you're waking up from sleep, you're in an internal gaze and then you start to turn it exterior and allowing the body to kind of do it at its own pace too,
Yeah,
as a, like
yeah.
a ceremonial kind of engagement, I think.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like as we were sharing about coming onto this call or this live, thinking about it like this co-regulation,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and that co-regulation can also be a ritual. Like it kind of it is, it has been,
Yeah.
and like we need to recognize it as such.
Right. And also
Right?
the way some people teach co-regulation is not my style. I'm like, I'm not going to co-regulate that way with you. Like, first of all, my voice is deep. I don't go into yoga voice. I'm going to go into my like bass and I'm going to feel the thunder.
Yeah.
I might blow you out a little bit, but I'm joking, but I think it also it's interesting because there's the performance of skill and then there's also like how you do it, how your body is a frequency, how your body moves, and honoring that too. Like not
Yeah.
needing to perform, not needing to kind of conform to some sort of performance of ritual or some sort of performance of community or performance of co-regulation or relationship, that actually like to be totally centered and like I feel like with you it's been interesting. It's like I felt like my voice, I've been allowing to my voice to drop the longer we've known each other. It's like my voice is very low naturally. And that wasn't a safe thing as a kid. Like if you're on a soccer team and you're cheering, everybody's got these squeaky little voices and they're like doing the cheer and then you're like coming in as this like boom, boom, boom. It's like this really deep bass. It's harrowing. It's a harrowing experience to be like I was just dysphoric and like confused about like my frequency is so different from these other people.
Yeah.
But that being able to inhabit a frequency is also just like creating, taking up your full size, like you were saying your friend says, like about taking up your full size to be, I mean, I'm almost seeing that as like being centered in your own frequency and being permissive and giving consent to occupying your own frequency regardless of what it enacts around you too is a big piece for me.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. The regardless piece, regardless of what happens around you, like being able to, I mean, the whole work is to be able to hold yourself,
Right.
to to hold yourself while, other people disapprove or don't like or go away. And holding yourself sometimes looks messy, right? It's like there's a lot of pain and grief
Oh yeah.
moving through, but you are still holding the container for those internal events and movements to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like this phrase, like not my problem, going through my head too. There's I'm not very literate with dating apps, but I think I've described it to you as like swipe right, swipe left. Like, what experience do I want to have in this reality? It's like I'm gonna
Yes.
swipe on that one and swipe on that one.
I love that metaphor.
But I actually, it feels like very tangible. It almost feels like a sci-fi movie or something. Like I'm actually shifting something out of my line of sight to be like, this is not what I want to be focusing on right now, but this is.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and having like that kind of an active relationship and like it's very like metaphysical, I think, of an activity, but it is literally also mindset work. It's mindset affirmation work, and it's like even I feel like the NLP people probably do something like this where it's literally seeing like, okay, what codes, like what language does your nervous system respond to? So if you say no, what does that do? And if
Mhm.
you like, even in the core energetics model, where it's like you have these different dynamics around like pushing things away and saying like, get away from me or give me, like the energetics behind that have nervous system activations and they're like codes that you use to navigate reality. So it's sort of to take an active relationship in that, and to take a
Mhm.
very high sensation active relationship in that is probably one of the most powerful things that anyone can do for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Ah, there was something that I was going to add to
Hmm.
that. Add to that, but I forgot what it was. There was something about. I'm not gonna retrieve it again. But yeah. Ah.
It's a hard time right now. It's like it's intense right now.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like the somebody told me. I don't know if it was personal to me, but also the collective. Like that, so much of 2022 is going to be around shadow work.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I feel that for me too. Like as soon as like January 1st rolled around, I was like, oh, we're in this. Oh, it's like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I feel very fortunate to know, like, to have a flavor, to have gotten some really good, like, spoonfuls of what my shadow tastes like,
Hmm.
the quality of it. And yeah, because I've been getting some dosing, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I didn't see that there. Now I see it, and I gotta, yeah, it goes back to the clearing. That's what I wanted to say. Like, yeah, mindset does clear, like where you like decide or you feel this particular energy or thought coming in, and you like we have to like curate the space of like, okay, like you don't get to take up space right now, you do actually,
Yeah.
and really deciding what gets to have your attention.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The shadow is like, like you were saying earlier, like sometimes sensations come into your body and you use up all the skills in your toolbox, right? You try to move it, you try to journal about it, you meditate, you breathe, you do all the things, and
Hmm.
and you realize like, oh, this just needs to be felt. This just needs to be
Yeah.
related to, and it will move on its own time, but like clearly, it's just something that is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
making its way through my body. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how bad the sensation has been lately for me with the anger that's been coming up. It's just
Yeah.
so it just feels like it just ripples back in time, like old anger. And you know, I'm like, it's just not going away. It is literally like my whole system is restructuring around the awareness of it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm changing because of it. And it's going to
Yes.
take some time. Like it's just not, just doesn't like flash and then gone. It's like
No.
it's very slow, very metabolic, and I keep having this image almost of like myself projected outside of myself, almost like a mirror. But it's like I can feel myself cradling my own face, being like, I know it hurts right now, and you're gonna be fine. Like just stay with it.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be lashing out or creating any other ripples around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that is so critical that you're naming is that we need to have that teensy bit of distance, right? Because like we can be in the anger, right? We could be lashing out, or we can have just that little bit of distance that says like, oh, I'm noticing like all of this anger arising. And that distance is so critical. It's like it's critical in being able to hold it
Right.
and be able to create a space for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it comes from CBT, the whole two things can be two things thing that, like, even though I've never gone through the CBT programming or anything like that, I know people who have and who benefited from it. But
Mhm.
that phrase, two things can be two things, was sort of like, I kind of love it as a mantra because it's like, you can feel like shit and everything can be fine. Like it can be really bad here. Like it can be
Yeah.
really just feel so intense and it can feel like you need to fix something, but you don't actually need to do it.
Mhm.
No action needs to be taken. Just stay with it
Yes.
and be with it.
Right. Yeah, nothing needs to be gotten rid of, right? Like
Mm,
around,
yeah.
again, bringing it back to the full moon and all of the things that are releasing all of the illusions. Some of these illusions are deeply embodied. They're ancestral. They're cellular. And when we release them, it's like, your cells are getting like wrung out, like,
Right.
and all the nasty
Right.
juice is coming out.
I
It's
got
like,
a rash
ah,
back here. Like there's this little, it's literally, there's this one point right now that is like purging on my back
yeah,
near my shoulder blade. And I'm like, yikes, like what is going on there? Every time I take my plant medicines, it reactivates.
wow,
And I'm like, it's the same spot every single time. I'm like, it's probably a really specific channel. It's something that's not in my expertise as a practitioner, but it's like something that I'm noticing and mapping and kind of noting for later use. Like, okay, what is that?
yeah,
And learning about
yeah,
it. Yeah.
wow. That's
It's
really
so weird.
amazing. Yeah,
It's
it's really
so
amazing how
weird.
the body is. And it's like,
Yeah.
our bodies are talking to us all the time. And I was working with a client the other day who, moved into a new place, and the shoulder pain that they were having, like, just disappeared because they took action on this fear.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't override the fear. They moved forward with the fear, and then boom, it was gone.
Wow.
And so it's like, now that this is the area, and it doesn't generalize. It was just their body.
Right.
Like, their particular body had this thing on this side, and it's like all of those beautiful details about like how your particular body works through things or receives things or processes things. That's so much of the magic
Right. Right.
work. Yeah.
Right. And speaking of which, that reminds me of the adornment thing that I was resisting so much.
Yes, yes.
I actually was like, I need to have some kind of metal here. So this is just silver. But this is my left side.
Yeah.
A few years ago, under a lot of stress, I actually tore my shoulder. I was sleeping in a hammock, and the entire side of my body was so contracted that just the gravity of me sleeping on a hammock, trying to stretch it out, something just ripped. Like I actually heard it echo. It was like, it was out in nature. It was on a road trip, just totally ripped. And it's still been healing. It's been healing for the past few years, but it's off. Like I notice when I sleep on that side, there's like connective tissue that's just not there that should be. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something that I've been noticing is like there is dysregulation on this side, on my left side. And I can't remember, but I was thinking of it almost as like, I think when I was charting it maybe months ago, maybe last year or something, there was something going on with like my spleen. And I'm still mapping it. I'm still mapping it. It's like I'm not giving anybody any wisdom that they can like take and like apply it. But there was something about just one of the traditions that I came across, I think a lot of rebirthing breath workers, which was one of the first modalities I trained in, ended up adopting a lot of like fire ceremony and Hindu practices. And, I have my feelings like trying to navigate that environment, or I don't navigate that environment because I'm not really part of the rebirthing breathwork movement, if it is even a movement anymore. But there was something about how jewelry becomes medicine, where if you have, like, there were certain prescriptive metals that you would wear on a particular side of the body, and how like different metals have different information, and almost like a nutritional frequency input, which is like
Oh,
very woo woo crystals, but it's also like it's real. Like
yeah,
quartz is a thing. Like
yeah.
we use quartz in technology. We use silicon. Like whatever. I'm not super well versed in it, but it's interesting because I noticed that there's this like very buzzy feeling that pops up
Mm,
here, and it goes up here and it kind of runs down my left hip, and it's vulnerable. Like it almost feels arthritic sometimes.
yeah.
And ever since I put this on and I've just been kind of like living with it, it almost feels like it's drawing the charge off of me, and
Ooh,
it's cooling down whatever's going on there. So
yeah,
I could be
yeah.
addressing it nutritionally probably if I went to a naturopath or somebody who could really identify in a much more specific way. But like for me, I'm a lazy, sloppy practitioner that just like I'm like, let me just see what I can do that
Yeah,
can be a broad stroke and see how that changes things.
yeah,
But I was just
yeah.
thinking about the adornment piece again. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So good. So many pieces. We touched on so many pieces today.
I know we're just trying. We're trying. Like we're moving through
Well,
these
it's kind
times.
of all
Yeah,
over the place. It all kind of weaves together. It all makes
yeah,
sense. So all of the full moon vibes going on here.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm. Thank you so much for this convo.
yeah.
So good.
Thank you for initiating the whole Thursday thing.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm
All right.
terrified. I mean, I'm still like, I can still feel my heart terror. It's like, okay, moving into a new phase, moving into something different,
Yeah.
holding myself in that. And it's like, I know we've been going through so much transition lately, and like our relationship is transitioning into something. And
Yeah.
it's just trying not to let it get too much in the head and just like keep like moving through it and trying to show up is like the best I
Yeah.
can
Keep
do. Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Love you, my
I
friend.
love you too.
All
And thank you all
right.
for
Bye.
joining and whoever ends up watching the replay. All
Yeah.
right.
Post your questions and comments.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.